Never be afraid of ridicule. That's the moral of one of humanity's most important fables, The Emperor's New Clothes. It's essential to understand the moral of this story in order to avoid being taken advantage of. Of course, the story goes that the Emperor is deceived into purchasing clothes that don't really exist, and only the wise can see them, and so he's truly naked, and everyone else pretends they go along with the idea that he really is wearing these fabulous clothes, when in fact there's nothing, and the tailor just ripped him off. But one young child is unafraid of not being seen as wise, and so he's willing to note that the emperor is in fact naked. And of course, that's the correct attitude to have. We should simply speak the truth as we see it, without any fear of being ridiculed, without any fear of being mocked for being unwise, being ignorant, being stupid. Whatever the truth may be, we have to state it as we see the truth. We have to be honest and be unafraid of being ridiculed. Because if we are afraid of being ridiculed, of being made fun of for being ignorant or unwise or stupid, then that is a huge weakness and allows people to exploit us. If we care more about the approval, the praise of someone in a position of authority, someone who thinks they have the power to deem us intelligent or wise or knowledgeable, if we care about that person's opinion more than we care about simply stating the truth as we see it, then we can be exploited, we can be manipulated into saying things, doing things, or not saying things, not doing things, like in the story, pretending that we believe something that we know to be untrue, that our eyes tells us is untrue, that we know deep down is untrue, but we're willing to pretend, we're willing to play along so that we can get the approval of someone who we respect. And of course, it's perfectly natural to want that respect. It's just human nature. We want people to see us as smart. We want people to see us as wise and knowledgeable and everything good. But at a certain point, we have to be content with our own approval. As long as we're judging ourselves honestly, it's no problem. As long as we don't deceive ourselves, as long as we are honest with others and ourselves in our judgment of ourselves, then we can be content with that. We shouldn't require the approval of others, those in authority. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people in a position like that are just going to use people's need for approval as a means to control them, to silence them, to make them say things that benefit the person in authority, benefit their position, benefit their power base. They will simply use that human, very natural need for social approval, for validation. They'll use that against people. They'll use it to exploit them for their own purposes. And unfortunately, the only way to cut off the source of that manipulation is to be content with our own approval, with our own, not our own blind approval, not self-deception, certainly not that, because that would be no better than relying on the false assurances of someone in a position of authority, but more when we know we are being honest with ourselves and with others. That has to suffice. We have to learn to be content with that, and I believe we can, for the most part, be content with that. Even if everyone else in the world disapproves, as long as we are doing the right thing, I believe a sense of distinct satisfaction does emerge from that naturally. But it's also fair to recognize that human beings do have an innate need for social approval, and we need to feel valued and we need to feel validated. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that. And of course, our own approval will never completely satisfy us. We will always need some element of approval from broader humanity. That's just the way we are. But as best as we can, we should try to learn to be content with our own self-approval when it comes from a sincere place of honesty. When we, like the child in the story, when we can be willing to simply state what we see, not insist that what we see is completely correct, but simply be honest about what we do see, and not lie, not deceive ourselves in order to get the approval of someone who we feel is in a position of respect or authority. If we can do that, then we can really have the willingness to be honest with everyone, ourselves and everyone else. And if we do that, it would greatly reduce the amount of control that a select few number of people in positions of respect and authority. It can reduce the ability they have to manipulate broad segments of humanity. And we can devolve more individual power to the individual level. We can send more power down to each individual person, more initiative to commit actions the way we see, to live honestly. We can be more free if we are more honest, if we are willing to state the truth, and we teach ourselves to not need approval or validation from others, particularly those who we don't necessarily know personally, but we feel are perhaps above us in some sense, socially or in another way. If we can free ourselves of that need to the extent that is possible, given human nature and the limitations that come with it, if we can do that, we can become more free and potentially make the world a better place.